Boom.
Ready to go. Hey, everybody. This is a special time that we're coming together. We've got Stefan here, we got Josh, and we got Josh. Not the Josh that everybody is asking for, but we'll learn to...
It's not the Josh they want, it's the Josh they need.
There it is. Boom. Boom. Drop the mic.
You guys are going to know him as Cujo,
Yes,
which is a way
Cujo.
cooler name than Josh.
Yeah. Just as long as you know how to spell it. So it's Coojo. So I had to find that out. But anyways, the reason that we're here today is we want to talk a little bit about remote ID and kind of dispel some of the myths and misunderstandings about it. And Cujo here is from the FPVFC, one of the organizations that we have partnered up with.
We love them.
Oh yeah, we love them. I think they're one of our tightest partners right now with the fight and the push for the advocacy for the hobby and everything. So we joined forces with FPV Freedom Coalition, obviously the Flight Test Community Association, and then we have the Drone Service Provider Alliance and also Pilot Institute. So a team of us got together and kind of addressed what was happening or what might be perceived as happening, and just trying to set it all straight. So hopefully we get some good interaction, and it's not too boring for some people, but I think that it should be enlightening.
Well, it's kind of unfortunate because with everything with flight tests, and I know with PVFC and everyone else, like, we want to get people in the hobby. We want to be able to take over hurdles. One thing that does us no favors is not knowing what reality is.
Right.
And maybe a time like this is not the most entertaining, but it is absolutely incredibly important that we have accuracy and that people know what is really going on. So number one, the sky is not falling.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, they know it's coming down. And number three, they know how they can either be part of a solution or be able to navigate these new waters.
Yeah.
And we're really blessed with people like Cujo, Dave Messina, Greg. A lot of great people have kind of come together, and although this is not typically us, flying crazy challenges, this is important, and it's also important for you guys to be equipped with this. So when you do hear someone in despair or thinking about whether they do or do not want to get in the hobby, you can encourage them.
Yeah.
Because what kind of frustrates me more than anything, I think all of us sit here at this table and screen, is the fact that anytime misinformation discourages someone from trying out this great hobby, it just breaks our heart.
Yep.
And we don't want that to be the case. And we want you guys to be equipped and also to hopefully answer any questions so you can continue enjoying the hobby, promoting the hobby, advocating for the hobby, etc.
Oh yeah, because we know what miscommunication and stuff can do.
So I guess we got to educate first. And Cujo, God bless you, because you guys have a knack for technical knowledge and what's going on. And I appreciate you taking time here to
no problem.
Help us go through all this.
I'm happy to be here, guys. And, one of the cool things about, I've been with FPVFC since the beginning, since, it was just an idea. And the cool thing is I've been able to develop my skills and partner with people who feel like that we need to protect the hobby. And it's super important that we continue to do that. And, we've taken the tack of working with the FAA. Dave has been gracious enough to donate his time to work on the Drone Advisory Committee, or the AC as it's now called, and has participated in at least a dozen different tasking groups now. And through those tasking groups, we've been able to really push for advocacy for recreational flyers when that advocacy is severely lacking amongst a lot of the regulations that are happening right now. So it's definitely a blessing to be here. Definitely appreciate it, and glad to help in any way I can. So
I appreciate that, man.
Awesome.
Well, yeah, and we've gotten to work with Dave on a lot of different task groups and stuff. Task Group 12 was the most recent one, and he has a wealth of knowledge. And I don't know how he's wired that way. It probably freaks you out too. But why don't we start, first of all, with the most provocative word that we're going to be mentioning here, and I agree why it is provocative: remote ID.
Yeah.
Why don't you break that down for us?
So remote ID started with the FAA Reauthorization Act in 2018, and over the last couple of years, it's been kind of developing. So when it first came out, there was a lot of issues that the community saw in it. And when I say community, that's the entire industry as a whole, from recreational flyers to commercial flyers to small business operators to people like Google Wing. And so through that process, I know we did a major advocacy campaign. I think you guys did a massive advocacy campaign. And through that process and through a lot of other people's help, through relationships that we've been able to foster, from our inception, we were able to get 53,000 comments put into the FAA on remote ID. So currently, as it stands and where it's going to stand, basically, is there's 3 options for you. So you've got standard remote ID, which is going to be for essentially pre-built kits. So if you're DJI, if you're Skydio, if you're any of these bigger companies who are producing ready-to-fly kits, that they need to incorporate remote ID in 2 separate ways. So it needs to be on the drone or on the aircraft, and it also needs to be in the transmitter. And those 2 things need to communicate with each other, and they will be broadcasting out a variety of information. So it's going to be the location of the aircraft, it's going to be the location of the operator, it's going to be the speed, the height, it's all these things, as well as emergency messages if there are anything wrong with the aircraft, and
even the height of the pilot too.
Yeah, the elevation of the pilot for sure. And
thanks, Stefan. You'd be high in the air.
So these different elements will be broadcast out, and that information is going to be publicly available with something as simple as an iPhone, right?
And this is all on the standard.
This is standard remote ID. So standard remote ID starts next month, I believe on the 16th. Now there are rumors that that's going to get pushed back, but I haven't heard anything solid on that yet. And my fear is that that people are a little bit behind. So in terms of rolling out standard remote ID across their fleets. So we'll see what happens with that. Now, the second option is something that we at the FPV-FC pushed for big time, and that was the broadcast modules. And the reason we pushed for that is there was an old term called limited remote ID, in which you could only do certain things, and it phased out pretty much about 98% to 100% of the existing aircraft that existed. That would be drones, that would be DJI, that would be everything. Even from the drones that we build at home, it would just phase them all out, make them obsolete. You might as well have just bought a brick of mud, right? So we really push for broadcast modules, something that you could put onto what we consider a legacy aircraft, or something that we consider home built, which is vitally important to both of us, right? So the broadcast module made it through, and so now as soon as somebody develops one, you can put it on your aircraft. You can change it in between models. You'll have to register that with the FAA when you go to re-up your registration, or when the broadcast modules come out. Now, excuse me, that becomes effective next September.
Yeah.
So
now, and you're talking these broadcast modules, just so when people are listening to this, we're talking like something that's the size of like a receiver?
It can be, it's non-weight restrictive, and it's very, very small.
Okay.
And far more economical on a technical standpoint and an equipment standpoint than I would say standard remote ID would be.
Okay.
The nice part about the broadcast module is it doesn't have to be integrated into your transmitter. So it's just on the aircraft. It does, instead of broadcasting the pilot's location, it does broadcast the takeoff location. So
Which sounds a lot more, I mean, to me, as far as like privacy and security and everything, sounds a lot safer in the sense that if somebody's flying and if with a standard one, they know, okay, I know Stefan, okay, I see this plane and now that guy over there is flying it and I don't like this, I'm going to go over and, smack him with a plastic baseball bat.
Yeah, protection of people doing illegal activities is also should be part of safety as well too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You look at the severe consequences for doing anything to harm a pilot or an aircraft in flight, period, from the FAA. And that if we're going to be pushed, and I do say pushed, into this world of having to have those requirements on us, we should also benefit from the same respect and protection.
Yeah.
And that seems to kind of be a quiet point, especially with what you mentioned about privacy. Now, the broadcast modules also give you a little bit better privacy. Is that correct?
What? Say that again. I'm sorry.
No problem. The broadcast modules seem to give you a little bit more benefit in privacy because it's like a license plate number, right?
It is. So, both standard remote ID and the broadcast modules, they're going to broadcast general information. So they're not going to broadcast your name. They're not going to broadcast, any personal identifying information. However, the security concern, that I know that we're concerned with, that we're talking with the FAA on, DSPA is talking with the FAA on, as well as some other folks, is that the being able for that information to be publicly available can put the operator at risk, right? So it could put, if you've got somebody who doesn't want you flying around their house or, anything like that, it can put you at risk to an aggressive type person. It can also put you at risk to, if you're flying a commercial mission or, you've got a $600 quad and, over $1,000 of gear on you with your FPV goggles, somebody wants to take your stuff, they're going to know where you're at. And so that's a concern. And it's a big concern. And, I just hope to God that nothing ever happens. But
the freedom to do business, companies that are doing 107 activity should have the freedom to be able to do 107 activity without someone looking in on their activity saying, I want to get this business. That's a form of piracy. I think is not correct.
Right.
Dang, I never thought of it that way, but that makes perfect sense.
I know Dave, Cujo, myself, all the way back from CES times when remote ID came on, it was one size upsets everybody. There was not a good solution for anybody. There was only headaches for everybody. And I remember at CES, we were talking at one point, remember it was network or broadcast.
Yes.
And that was the big buzz terms. And the problem with network is there's a reason why there were so many telecommunication companies on the boards pushing for network. That's because Verizon and AT&T and all these places could charge you money to enjoy this simple, wonderful hobby.
Yeah.
So they just saw a financial opportunity, not only with recreational, but also with like Google and stuff like that. And they just wanted a piece of the pie.
And it became a form of gatekeeping, right? So, and that's absolutely not what we want in the recreational and STEM space, right? We want people to be able to get into it, as easily and as unrestricted as possible, so that they can enjoy it, have a good time, build some inspiration from it, and who knows, maybe go into a commercial business, maybe become a full-scale airline pilot, maybe
they could become part of the solution to the huge problem the FAA has.
Right.
And that's a shortage of pilots, mechanics, and aviation careers.
Right.
Huge shortage. I mean, it's today. So we talked about obvious that, and flight test and FPVFC, Pilot Institute, and so many other people have been fighting like crazy to make sure that that this is advocated for. There's a third option, which to me, I'm the most frustrated that it has not been already put into place because it's part of the original mandate from Congress back in 2018, and that's FRIAs.
Yes.
Shame on you, FAA, for not having this be a solution. I mean, honestly, I don't know any other way to say it, but shame on you, because this was the easiest thing to do, and you chose to do it last, and it completely threw out the door everything else that we're trying to do to make sure people can easily get in the hobby. Schools can still use STEM programs around aviation to build future career pilots and careers. yet you did it last. And I don't know why. I don't think it's right. But let's talk about FRIAs and what that is.
Yeah, so a FRIA is a FAA recognized identification area. So in its most basic form, think of it as a dedicated location where you can fly without remote ID. And you can do whatever you normally would do in a FRIA, even if you're flying commercial, right? So if you're going to go review a quad for your YouTube channel, or you're going to go film some flight, or you're just going out to fly for fun, in a FRIA, remote ID is not required. So this is going to be an ideal solution for people who fly at clubs, could be AMA clubs, could be out at Edgewater, that kind of thing.
Could be someone's backyard. It could be a school. It could be a church.
And that's the other thing, is an educational institution can now, in the final rule, they added educational institutions to be able to apply for those. Now the problem is that two people, educational institutions and what they call CBOs, which is a community-based organization. Yeah. And the problem, and the reason why FRIA, Josh is upset about FRIAs not being possible at the moment, is that the FAA hasn't defined a clear path to become a CBO. So, organizations like mine, organizations like FTCA, who want to have gone through the steps originally laid out into becoming a CBO. There's no path to do that. There's no application process. They haven't defined that yet. And we got an advisory circular about a year ago ish, and about that, and then just standstill. And this path to become a CBO was supposed to be rolled out, I think 120 days after the reauthorization, something very short period, like 4 months or 6 months.
The very first thing, and they didn't even have to come up with what it takes to be a CBO because Congress did that for them. And by the way, I'm not advocating for anything from what Congress did with the Reauthorization Act, but the fact is when Congress does that, it's not like something you can debate. You can do comment periods with the FAA on how it should be executed, but the Congress put down, I believe it was Section 349, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they put down through Section 349, CBOs, FRIAs, trust, which is basically the testing, safety tests, remote ID. And the pathway they gave for CBOs to be recognized from the very beginning was you had to have safety guidelines, you had to have educational programs, a place to fly at, and programs that people can participate in. I'm probably missing one or two.
And a 501c3.
Yep. So immediately, people that were advocating for the hobby, FPV Freedom Coalition, FTCA was created. All those things people put energy in to make sure that they could continue the community represented to grow. And they put it off and put it off. And as Cujo said, you can't have a FRIA without the CBOs. Yeah. But it's the most simple thing because it's right there.
Right.
Are you a 501c3? Do you have an educational program? Do you have a place for people to fly? Do you have programs? Do you have safety guidelines? Okay, you meet the criteria. The goal is not to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's for every aspect of the hobby to be able to have people that represent those people that are passionate, like FPVFC, FPV Freedom Coalition. FTCA, we really celebrate the DIY, home-built educational programs, things like that. AMA, I would say it would be the older demographic, pre-built airplanes, and the structured model club. Now the hobby can be represented, advocated for, and people can have pathways to be able to freely enjoy it without burdens. The CBOs were supposed to be the ones that took that burden off the people and be able to advocate. I think that's the answer why it was put last.
I think so too, and not that I want to conspiracy theory, anything up, but CBOs are supposed to be part of the stakeholder group that the FAA engages with when it comes to regulations, and by postponing the ability to create CBOs, they have effectively limited who they need to talk to, and so from my perspective, that's a bad idea. And you can see from the representation on organizations like the DAC and some of their working groups that recreational is an afterthought. And the sad thing is that recreational is the largest demographic of flying, period. I mean, we outclass commercial operators by an order of magnitude. I think last major count from the FAA is 1.2 million recreational operators. So just in the United States, that's not even worldwide.
And the previous count was 1 million, so...
Yeah. So
200,000 increase.
yeah. And so, I mean, I think that, there's a major part of the demographic that is getting sidelined. And by not allowing CBOs to essentially be created, they have effectively, squashed that. So, that's why, a lot of what we do, we tend to be in parts of Part 107 and in commercial territory with a lot of the advocacy we do. And it's not because, we're falling into that trap. It's because a lot of things that come out of commercial can then roll down into recreational eventually. So, and by showing the willingness to do the work in even some of the stuff that has little to no bearing on what we do, like I know Dave was part of the C2 signal drone advisory committee tasking group, and little to no impact on anything, but by being a part of it and doing the work, he gained some contacts for us and definitely some respect within that industry. So
well, and you nailed it with describing the size and magnitude of the recreational pilots. There seems to be a notion, and I read it in this document here, that recreational flying is going away. It's the complete opposite. It's been rebirthed.
I agree. I agree, and I think that I think right now the skepticism towards getting involved in the hobby is centered around remote ID and how difficult it's going to be, how expensive it's going to be. But here's the deal, guys: is right now is the best time to get into the hobby. If you're looking to build, you've still got a whole nother year before you even need to be compliant with remote ID. This current deadline is for manufacturers only. And here's the deal with that. If you are somebody like Flight Test, or let's say you're Get FPV or Rotor Riot, or any of these guys that like to do pre-built, ready to go drones or aircraft, or you're doing kits for people to build at home and put together, you're safe, you're fine, because as long as you are staying in the almost ready to fly category, where there's some level of building happening by the end user, you're fine. You don't have to put in standard remote ID, and there's a whole nother year until broadcast modules are required by the end user. So right now this deadline with remote ID, strictly for manufacturers, it's really going to be relegated to the big names out there. And the FAA just approved the ASTM standard, which has been in working,
like 2 days ago, right?
Yeah, and it's been in working mode for 3 years. They finally approved it, and so now I'm pretty sure we're going to start seeing some approvals for remote ID coming. I just don't think everybody was super prepared for that, and I think by kind of holding off approving that standard, which they've had for a while now, as well as having FAA personnel involved in that ASTM working group, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot with being able to roll it out. So
just imagine you have a major test, and then literally 30 minutes before you have to take the test and be knowledgeable of it. It's like, okay, here's what the test is about.
Right, exactly.
That's kind of what they did to the aviation community and the model aviation community. Is like, okay, we're going to hold back the standards, and then we're going to give them to you, and then you have about a month to comply.
Right.
And it sounds doom and gloom right now. I'm not trying to be it. Like, we're going to express frustration and anger where it's warranted, but we're also going to make sure people have the truth, because it's not as, I don't say it's not as bad. It's not good, but it's not something that's going to keep you from enjoying this great hobby. It's not something that's going to keep you from being able to promote the hobby.
Yeah.
We just want to give you the clarity, because for us, getting someone in the hobby is not just teaching them how to fly, but it's teaching them how to do it safely, legally, and properly. Yeah. Unfortunately, we can't affect what legally is.
Right.
And everybody has a choice to say, I will not comply. But when we're going into schools and we're teaching schools how to bring aviation into their programs, we don't have that option to say, oh yeah, let's make you all, not listen
Criminals.
to criminal. I didn't want to say the word, but criminals. Let's do a little Johnny Manson. Let's make them criminals. No, we gotta navigate this world, but I'm not going to give energy to people or statements that are not true. And I think that's what we want to unpack.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, is there's a lot of untruths out there. I mean, they're lies that people are getting.
Sensational.
It's trying to get a little bit of drama drummed up so you get a little attention. And I mean, sad to say, it's usually the YouTube wannabes that, hey, I want to get something up, my subscribers up or my viewership up. So if I say something really provocative, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. I mean,
if it bleeds, it leads.
If it bleeds,
it's human nature. But here's the thing: am I happy about remote ID? No. Am I furious that FRIAs have not been given the process yet, or CBOs? So we could have had these mechanisms, and then a year ago, 2 years ago. I mean, we're talking 2018, and like you said, Cujo, it was supposed to be done within 120 days. Now I know nothing in the government is done quickly, but even we were at Mall of America last week doing STEM programs, and what an amazing experience. We were adjacent to where the FAA booth was. There's no animosity there. We went up to them, we were talking to them, everything was friendly and pleasant, but it's like, guys, you're killing us. You're not giving us the opportunity to do what you've been mandated to do. And how are we going to navigate this? And it's always kind of like the same blanket answer. Again, a lot of very nice people, we can all get along, but you're not serving your purpose, and you're not equipping us to serve our purpose. And that's wrong.
Well, and I think, go ahead, Lee.
No, go ahead, Cujo.
I think the part of the problem is that the FAA is seen effectively within the recreational community as combative, right? And it's not that the FAA is out to get everybody or anything like that. It's that they're the guys with the rules, and but at the same time, the FAA hasn't gone through to the motions to ingratiate themselves within the community, to be effective teachers, to
that's
really
key.
Exactly.
I mean, because and that's the thing, is like we're talking to individuals that are great individuals, great people, but when it comes to knowledge of the airspace, the recreational model airspace and everything, and they have no idea.
There's tremendous other initiatives about getting people into the flying space. I thought it was 64,000. How many careers short are we going to be in the aviation realm within 10 years?
640,000.
640. Oh, I forgot a very important zero there.
And that's not a study that's a Boeing study.
So current events, let's just go to current events. They just shut down airspace in some of the busiest cities because they did not have enough employees. Let that sink in. That's a problem right now. So you want to fly into New York, you want to fly into LAX, you want to fly into some of these big places. There's not enough career pilots, career maintenance people, career air traffic controllers, and the list goes on, to fill the jobs today. What happens in 10 years if there's not a upswelling of people passionate about flight? And we have so many great companies. We're one of them. FPVFC is one of them. Horizon Hobby. All these great companies are out there saying, let's go ahead and make sure you have a pool of people. And they're like, okay, but first we got to figure out how we're going to engage that, and we got to go ahead and figure out what hurdles you got to get over. And then when they find out the processes, they don't even give it to them. I'm not saying it well, but I'm beyond frustrated because we have the solution, and those kids are getting older and older every year, and we're missing opportunities to prime the pump.
Well, so let me, just so I can understand what you're saying, Josh. Like, it's not that we're mad at remote ID. It's more that we're frustrated with not having the bridge or the mode in which to get over that. Okay, you tell us we have to go 55 mile an hour down the road. That's fine. Well, give us the vehicle in which we need to go down the road to abide by your laws. So if you want us to have remote ID, or they want to monitor that, okay, then let us know what we can do to abide by your rules. And they haven't done that.
If you're going to put this burden on the people and on the industry, you better have your act together when it comes to the solutions you need, so
Right.
we have clarity and we can communicate it and execute it well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it is that when it came down to remote ID, so the initial anger was placed at the feet of the FAA, and it really has nothing to do with it. Congress mandated this,
Yeah.
right? So Congress is the one that said, hey, you're going to be required to have remote ID. We've seen Congress over the past couple years mandate some other things in relation to drones, especially when it comes to companies like DJI and security issues. But all this came from Congress, and now the problem is Congress said this needs to happen, and FAA was supposed to go out and execute. I don't know where you guys work, but where I work, if you don't execute something on a deadline, like there's probably some kind of conversation that needs to be had.
Oh, there's
right?
consequences for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where we're at. So now, yeah, the frustration is put at the feet of the FAA. And the other part of it is that, hey, you're supposed to have remote ID, but we're not going to give you any specs on how that's supposed to be. In fact, not only that, you have to come up with it and then come to us, and we basically get to put the check or the X on it, right? And so, that's where ASTM and their working group came into play. They're an international standards board, and I think for this particular group, it was over 120 people working for 3 years to create this. So if you're a small company and you build ready-to-fly drones, you can't compete with that. And so it's just like, if you're a company like DJI or you're a company like Skydio, maybe you've got that in the bag. But you're a small-time company. It's just like you're relying on that standard, that basically crowdsourced standard, right, from an international standards board to come out, so that you have something to go off of. And so that's part of the other problem, right?
Yeah. Well, kind of circling back with remote ID, there were some things that were said that were incorrect, and so everyone knows our personal opinions. Bad enough with having to have CBOs and FRIAs not being recognized yet, because that would be the easiest solution. But let's talk about what requires to have remote ID on the basic level, and that won't be required until next year.
Correct.
September. So say you're flying a DJI product, a race quad, or a home-built model aircraft, or an ARF model aircraft. None of this really hits you until next year.
Right. So the end user is not required to have remote ID until September 16th, 2023. So now the only thing, the things that need to have remote ID are going to be anything that needs to be registered. That's your baseline. So if you're flying recreationally, 250 grams up to 55 pounds, right? So so if you're flying recreationally and you're flying sub 250, you're fine. You don't have to have anything on there. If you're flying commercially, however, and you are flying sub 250, you will have to have remote ID.
So, for example, the mini Mavic, that's 249 grams. If you're flying that for 107 activities, you're going to need to have a broadcast module.
Yes,
and
but if you're flying it recreationally,
you're fine.
Just to take some pictures for your vacation, you're fine.
Well, and a lot of people have these drones and stuff out there that they purchased. Like you said, you could have purchased it a month before this deadline, and said technically, legally, you're bricked without a solution like broadcast module. So that's important. Now, when does the 107 activity for sub 250 kick in? Is that a month from now, or is that a year from now?
So that will be a year from now. So the end user is not required or responsible for remote ID until next year. The deadline currently is that the manufacturers, anybody who is manufacturing or producing a drone for sale and use in the United States, is required to have standard remote ID. Now that comes in a already ready to fly. So if you're going to Best Buy, you're picking up a DJI Mavic. starting next month, it will be required to have remote ID active on it, assuming that deadline doesn't get pushed. So, but beyond that, remote ID isn't consumer ready yet until next year.
Yeah. So don't sell your planes. Don't
No.
get out of the hobby. If anything, between now and then, enjoy it even more. Get more people in the hobby. Because a lot of the things you're hearing us kind of pound our fists and screaming out, they are, I promise you, going to be figured out and addressed by the time it's a reality. And our goal, and I even forgot, I'm sorry, I've been talking about FPVSC, FTCA, Commercial Drone Alliance. They're amazing too. I mean, everybody's united goal is to have these solutions. It's our burden to bring to you. Our biggest thing that broke our heart was seeing how many people were disheartened from recent information being released. And it's like, well, I guess the hobby's over. I guess I'm not going to be able to do this anymore. And seeing the lives that are changed and seeing that the people that are touched through this hobby, whether it's educationally, whether it's just relationally. I mean, the original vision of Flight Test was connecting people relationally on a faith-based level by getting parents the ability to engage with their kids on a common activity. That was what we did in our backyard, before Flight Test even existed, was we taught parents how to teach kids how to fly. And Lee, you breathed so much of that vision in from those early days. That potency that thing is what we want to protect.
Correct.
So when we see hurdles and misinformation come up that cause people to be discouraged from using this amazing God-given tool, it's offensive to us. It sparks a lot of frustration and anger.
Yeah.
So trust us when we say that we are going to work every bit as hard, if not harder than most people, to bring solutions. And we have the right relationships with the right people. The way that FPVFC is advocating for FPV activity, which has its own other line of hurdles, BV loss for one of them, maybe.
Right.
Just know that there's different people that have amazing strengths, and we're all working together in a really good way to be able to serve you guys. And as times come up, we're going to be able to address these things. And sometimes it won't be information that's going to be making everyone happy. But we are committed to giving you a way to legally navigate these waters economically too.
Yeah, and FPV, which is obviously something I'm passionate about, does have its own set of challenges. So, one of the things that came out in the final rule was some vague wording in relation to FPV. So, and this is another, one of those misnomers out there that, FPV is going to be illegal. Yeah, no, it's not. And one of the wording that they put, I forget how they put it, is that the person in control of the aircraft has to maintain visual contact throughout the flight. And people took that to mean that the remote ID rule was making FPV illegal. And this is something that Dave and I think Vic had conversations with the FAA, and they specifically said, no, we're not outlawing FPV. As long as you have a visual observer, you're fine. That visual observer is the substitute for maintaining visual contact, all that stuff. But one of the things we're pushing for is for the FAA to hopefully put out an advisory circular, just clarifying that, just saying, hey, look, default to Section 349, where it says a visual observer, can substitute for that. So stuff like that people are saying, the sky is falling for FPV. That's not true either. And I think that just people want to latch onto something, and what I would tell you is latch on to hope that this hobby is going to be here, because you've got people like these guys that are definitely pushing it, and we're here to back them up. We're here to back everybody up as best we can. So
you do a great job at it, man. Yeah, definitely. So good things ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, do not take any of this information that allows it cause you to not be motivated to go out and enjoy this great hobby. Use it as a tool to connect with others and to have fun. And we'll continue to bring on the realities of it, the hurdles. I do anticipate, and I think you've heard it too, there's going to be more information about CBOs and FRIAs coming up probably within the month, right?
Yeah, the rumor is that it's imminent. So that's That's the word they're
It
using.
used to mean 120 days.
So it hopefully it's coming. I think they one of two things is going to happen. They're going to wrap it up before the next reauthorization starts hitting papers, because that's coming up next year, or they're going to postpone it until afterwards. And God, I hope that doesn't happen. So, but one of the things I will say, and something that I'm passionate about, is if you don't keep in mind that this stuff came from Congress initially. So the FAA did not create this out of thin air. It did come from lawmakers. So if I would tell you to get passionate about understanding where your local representatives sit on this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I would tell you to get passionate about participating in that process. So understand what and it seems silly, right? Of all the major issues of our day, right? And we're concerned about what you feel we should be doing with recreational aviation, model aviation, right?
Yeah.
But it's important, and if it's important to you, then it should be important to them. So get to know where they stand on it, and if they don't stand where they need to, get out and vote.
Yeah, vote the way your conscience depicts. And every congressman and every representative I know, they have to do a lot of air travel. And I'm sure a couple of them have probably been affected negatively, through some of the current shortages we have.
Oh man!
But I know when we've talked to people, we've gone to Washington and we've talked to our current representatives, there's some really great things. Bringing this into the educational environment is something I've never seen, whether it's an RD in front of their name, they've ever wanted to squash. Also, the aspect of providing jobs. This is not just protecting a hobby, this is protecting the gateway to jobs. And if our representatives do not care about that, then we definitely have the wrong representatives. So it is incredibly informative to them because they just don't know what they don't know. And when they picture a drone, they picture, unfortunately, a DJI bot thing, not people building, creating, flying, and having a passion for this whole lifestyle.
We'll invite all of our representatives out to Flight Fest.
There you go.
There you go.
I like
it's funny because Alex, he went to the last ACT meeting, and he reached out to Emacs and got them to send a couple little drone kits for him. And he got a couple of the, I think he got Houston Mills under the goggles. He got a couple other folks there under the goggles. So it was a great way to, hey, during your lunch break, why don't you actually try this out and actually learn about what you're doing, and I think that's the biggest thing, right, is education. We want to say educate the young kids, but we also want to say educate the people who make the regulations and educate the people who write the laws so that they understand. And I know they're busy people and they've got a lot going on, but a simple give them some stick time under a set of goggles, or show them how much fun it can be with some with a kids program. Invite them to what you're doing locally in your clubs and amongst your peers. Get them out there so that they can see what's going on and they can understand how important this is.
Beautifully said, man.
Oh yeah, very beautiful. And
Thanks,
so
Cujo.
I think we'll wrap it up there, and just to emphasize the importance of educate and give that information, not only to our listeners here, but understand that the reason that we're doing this is so then you can, like Cujo said, you can take it to your representative. So all the information we talked about today, we have in a nice little document that we all came up with, that we're going to make available to anybody who wants it. It'll be out in the FTCA. At least the link will be out to it in the FTCA update this month. But if you have any questions at all, you can, feel free to contact us, contact FPVFC, the Drone Service Provider Alliance or Pilot Institute, any one of us on that. And all that contact information is, going to be in this document as well.
Yeah, and definitely check out the people that we've mentioned here too. They all have a different aspect of flight and hobby that they represent, and they all do an exceptional job. And I know from our point of view, partnering with people that fulfill the whole vision of flight is the number one priority. And I'm really happy to be part of the relationship with FPVFC, Pilot Institute, Drone Alliance. So check them out, and you'll see people working together can still accomplish great things.
Yep. Well, cool.
Awesome. Well, Josh, Cujo, thank you, man, for your time.
Absolutely.
Look forward to seeing you again and flying with you again. You guys did a killer job at Flight Fest.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate it. It was so much fun. We were definitely happy to be there. It was probably one of the coolest things I've done ever. So I loved it. I loved every bit of it. So,
well, beautiful. For those of you that are tuning in, watching this, or listening to this, thank you, and hopefully we have some more better good news coming up here pretty soon.
Go out and fly something.
Yeah,
have fun, guys. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Yep, absolutely.
See you.